Hello friends, and welcome back to the penultimate episode of my 31-day challenge. It's day 30. I cannot believe how fast this month has gone. Day 30 of 31 days where every single day I've been answering your questions about creating a career or a business that you love. In today's episode, I'm going to be answering the question, how do you balance creative/original passion kind of projects? How do you balance all of that with paying client work? I'll be diving into that in a minute. But first, let me make the announcement that I'm sure a lot of you were expecting. I am going to carry on doing the daily podcast. It's no longer going to be a challenge. It's no longer going to be, I'm no longer going to have a time limit on it. As of the 1st of August, I will continue to put out a daily podcast. It might not always necessarily be a structured episode. It might not be me talking about or answering a specific question. It might just be my kind of thoughts on subjects. It might be like things in the realm of kind of motivation and self-development, or it might be something related to marketing or business. It will all come back full circle to me as a human being working in the VR and immersive world. So it will still be relevant to all of you listening. And I will still be taking questions. And if there's, if there are subjects that you want me to talk on, if there are questions about your journey as a VR or a 360 creator that you want me to help with, please keep sending me those questions. You can send them to me at alexmakesvr on Instagram or Twitter. You can send me longer questions at alexmakesvr@gmail.com. And I will continue to be putting out a fairly regular newsletter where I will be giving you the inside scoop on not only what I talk about in the podcast episodes, but also just general tips and tricks for creating a career or a business in this industry that you genuinely will love, because that has always been at the heart of the reason why I wanted to do these podcasts, was to share the knowledge and share the passion that I've kind of built up over the years for this industry, and all of the stuff that I'm going through in real time that could help you guys. And that's what I want to continue to do. I want to share like all of the stuff I've learned, if that can help you. And it is helping a lot of you. I've heard from so many people that have either got their first client after listening to these podcasts, or have gone on to land even more work, or have pivoted successfully from their current job into having like a side hustle and dipping their toes into the VR industry. Like I've heard from so many of you, and it means the world, and I want to continue doing that. So although it won't be necessarily as structured going forward in terms of what I talk about, I will absolutely, the way I think about it, the way I am thinking about it anyway at the moment, as of the 30th of July 2020, the way I'm thinking about it is I want my podcast to be a bit like a YouTube channel. And I know some of you have harassed me to actually do a YouTube channel. It's something that I will explore in future. At the moment, I just really enjoy podcasting, and this is the platform that I want to focus on right now. But I want to treat it a bit like a YouTube channel, in that it's not necessarily just guests every week, because I know that a lot of podcasts do that. And don't get me wrong, I will be having guests on my podcast in future that I think will help you and be interesting conversations to have. But at the same time, I want to be able to have this platform to explore all sorts of different stuff, because at the end of the day, I am a human with lots of different interests and lots of different things that make me who I am. And I think that's super important, that although we are people, all of us, all of you listening, we're all part of this beautiful, wonderful, crazy emerging industry that is virtual reality and immersive tech. At the same time, we're also human beings that have lives and thoughts and feelings on the world, and that's something that I also want to not shy away from. I want to be able to kind of explore a lot. The other big thing is, in fact, as of recording this, a couple of days ago, the press kind of release was announced that my latest original VR drama, Bad News, will be going into production next year. So that's going to be hectic. I'm super excited about that. I'm thinking that I might use the podcast as a vehicle to kind of talk about the ideas that, like, give you a behind the scenes, talk about the ideas that I'm having about it, maybe even talk about bits of the script. Would that be interesting to you guys? Like, understanding the process that I've gone through so far to get it to where it is, but also how I tackle the actual making of it. Like, instead of just recording that process along the way and releasing it after the piece is already out, I thought maybe it'd be interesting to include you guys to be on this journey with me, because it's pretty huge. Like, so bad news for those of you who haven't seen the announcement, it's an original VR drama about a new employee of the hottest new app, Bad News, which allows you to outsource your bad news. I haven't quite nailed the way that I pitch it yet, as you can tell, but essentially you will strap on the headset and you will become the main character of the story, and you will have to navigate potentially awkward, funny, difficult situations where you have to deliver some bad news to someone. And yeah, I'm super excited about it. It's going to be a real roller coaster. It's the first ever VR project commissioned by the BFI network, which is the British Film Institute, for those of you who aren't aware of that. And it's a pretty huge deal for them to get behind a VR project, because for so long, it's been more kind of, VR has been more seen as an art kind of medium rather than a film-based medium. But as you know, I'm super, my background is filmmaking, and I'm super passionate about storytelling from the point of view of character-driven dramas. So it's going to be a wild ride, and I'm super excited to share it with you if that's something you'd be interested in. But for now, let's crack on with the penultimate episode of the 31-day challenge. So, how do you balance original work, original passion, creative work with paying client work? For a long time, I used to think that my business model was going to be to, like most people who start in the video production world, my business model was going to be to do as fewer paying jobs as possible, to create a comfortable enough lifestyle for myself, to then use all the profit from those jobs to funnel into my passion projects. And that is the business model that a lot of companies have. It seems like for the majority of people that I know that work in very, very high level VR entertainment, this is their business model. Whether it be they create VR games that they know they're going to sell really well so that they can then use the profit to make more artistic or more kind of experimental VR entertainment that then gains profile and is kind of scratching that passion itch, which then feeds back into doing the kind of more commercial mainstream stuff, which then gets money, which then funds back into the passion projects. Whether it's that side of things, or whether it's, like a Marshmallow Laser Feast company, which I know that they're in the last kind of year, they have more moved towards doing almost entirely their own work. But for a long, long time, for those of you who don't know Marshmallow Laser Feast, which, I mean, rivals Cats Are Not Peas as the best company name, might be biased though, as someone that loves a weird kooky name for a tech company. But yeah, they do massive VR multi-user experiences and installations. They had an incredibly popular piece at the Saatchi Gallery in London last year, I believe, or it might have been the year before, called Oceans of Air, or We Live in an Oceans of Air, which was a room scale multi-user experience where you would walk around and you would basically like see your breath. You would see how your breath and other people in the experience's breath and oxygen and how it goes kind of in and out of the trees and in and out of your body. And you would see it kind of, they were using some really cool technology to like track things like your pulse and your breath and all that kind of stuff. And it was like tracked in real time. It was all very, very high level, incredible stuff. But that company, they basically make their money, or did up until very, very recently. I'm not sure what they do now, but they make their money from doing big commercial events. They would put on these like insanely awesome light shows or drone shows, or, you know, they would do like, I think one of the biggest things they did was like the U2 concerts, where they would like design all of the light show stuff, or fashion shows. They do all sorts of stuff basically. But, you know, that's most people's business model, is to do the enough commercial work to then fund some of the more experimental stuff that isn't necessarily as commercially viable, which wink wink nudge nudge, VR drama, not necessarily commercially viable yet. So so that was how I looked at it for a long time. It was kind of like, right, you do this thing and then that thing feeds the other thing, and the passion and the original thing, that's what you want to get to, but realistically the other stuff is what's going to fund it. And I feel like people have an attitude about that, and I was certainly one of these people when I first started working in that way, where I was almost I was complacent about the work that I was doing, which was paid for, because ultimately I just thought of it as a means to an end. And then probably about, I want to say a couple of years ago, what I started to realise was actually, because I spend so much of my time and my brain space, I feel like I use that word so often, and what I mean is like, is it brain space? I feel like over these 31 days, I've really started to understand that sometimes I just chat shit. Anyway, let's get back on track. I started to realise that so much of my, yeah, it is brain space, isn't it? The space in my brain was being, oh God, the space in my brain was being taken up by so much of this commercial work, because of course, like, especially when you're building from the ground up and you want a fairly decent, comfortable life rather than being a starving artist, a lot of my hours of the day were going towards paying work. And I realised that actually it wasn't good enough to just be complacent with that work. It wasn't good enough to just take on any project just for the money. I started to realise that was one of the things that was burning me out and was making me miserable, because I was falling out of love with the art of VR because I was just taking on any job just for the money. And then I started to realise, okay, well, what do I love about maybe the more original side of stuff? So what do I love creating? If money wasn't a problem and I could create any project in VR, what would it be? Well, it would probably be character-driven, emotionally impactful, film-based VR experiences, because I'm a filmmaker. I love film-based projects. I love characters. I love storytelling, where you can, like, so much of the world you discover through TV, through film. You explore so many big ideas about the world through it. And also the thing that I like about film and TV, which I don't necessarily like as much about the art world, is film and TV, like, there's something for everyone. Of course, there's like different kinds of like genres which feel a little bit more snooty, but I feel like I don't know, because I don't really exist in the art world. I'm not an artist. Like, I would call myself a filmmaker, not an artist. I know that there is so much nuance in that, and I know that we could literally have a whole episode debating like art, like what even is an artist. But essentially, if you're a creative person, you're probably an artist. But in terms of like the art industry, I feel like it's quite elitist, it's quite classist. There's a barrier to entry. There is like this there is intentionally this mystery around it, this sense of like, oh, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be able to saunter into the gallery and, you know, have an opinion about, oh, light blue for that. Interesting. That must be a commentary on the divide in the current state of austerity. Do you know what I'm saying? I know that you know what I'm saying. My Leicester girlness is coming out now. The accent is out. I've always found, I don't know, maybe it's just the way that I've been brought up. Maybe it's because I was brought up in Leicester, and that felt very kind of like foreign to me. This idea of like this kind of like, it felt very London. It felt very like high society. Like, I've just never really felt comfortable operating in the art world, which is hilarious given that VR pretty much at the moment only operates in the art world when it comes to entertainment. More on that at some point. But the thing I like about film-based stuff is it's super accessible, and it like you can reach a lot of people and you can convey a lot. And there's obviously there's nuance, and you've got like some independent film that could be seen as more art, which kind of wouldn't necessarily appeal to a mainstream. But I like that most people can understand the world through seeing characters that they feel like akin to, or they can kind of empathize with. So I knew quite quickly that I wanted to work with actors in character-based drama VR experiences, even though that's not like what's cool at the moment, even though that's the thing that doesn't necessarily sell as well, even though I could make a lot more money doing a lot more different stuff. I know that, but that's not what interests me. What interests me is character-based, emotionally impactful. I want someone to put on the headset and step into someone else's shoes. I want someone to put on a headset and put them in a situation that changes their views on real-world topics, that changes their view about a situation. And that can be the case where even when you're working on commercial projects, even when you're working, I think I've talked about on previous podcasts, like a cybersecurity project, or looking at kind of marketing a new product that stops your car from getting dirty. Like there are ways of doing those things through character-driven projects. And all of it, I started to realize that that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I want to focus on. And I'm not going to segment out what I do commercially versus what I do kind of original works wise, because otherwise I'm going to be miserable. And also the other flip side to this is when you just start to define the kind of experience you're interested in. Like if you're interested in more documentary based, or you're interested in more like action based, or more like travel based, or fantastical animation type based stuff, like whenever you start to kind of define what it is that you like in general, regardless of whether you're doing it for money or whether you're doing it for passion, what you start to realize is you start to attract those kind of projects into your life. You start to get this opportunity to work on paying projects where you're learning skills and working on skills, I guess, that translate directly over to your passion-based stuff. And if you're really clever, you can, tack on a little bit of kind of like R&D. If you've got like a specific thing that you want to R&D for an original project that happens to coincide with the same kind of time that you're doing a commercial project, and you're like, I really need to R&D a little bit of that, and this commercial project needs a little bit of, I don't know, whatever it might be, ambisonic audio, like this could be a great opportunity for me to R&D something for my original work through funding it through the commercial project, because I was going to need to fund it through the commercial project anyway. This is something that I really need and want for the paying client. But I can just piggyback on that and just pay really close attention to that and use that as learning for my original project. So the stuff that I've been working on for the last 2 years, since I've kind of pivoted Cats Not Peas into that specialist round of like, we only really, and of course, yes, I've had to work my arse off to get to a point where I get to choose like those kind of projects only. And it took a while to like wean out the kind of clients that would let me do that kind of work. But once you're in that position, now I can look back at the last 2 years of commercial projects I've worked on and say, every single one of them, I have been able to test a new theory about like either my directing skills, or I've tested different workflows on how to record voiceovers, how's best to kind of build a scene from the ground up, how's best to kind of have people interact. And also you've got that guaranteed audience. You know that this piece is going to be seen by people. And if you stay close to the client, if you don't just go, all right, I've done my job, bye. If you stay in touch with them, if you start to kind of like try and understand, if you try and like kind of understand their business and want to be integral and understand their distribution of the VR project, you can then actually sometimes even be there. I've been there several times when my clients have like showed the VR piece, and I'm getting that real-time feedback from the people who are watching it. So that then feeds back into my directing process, that feeds back into my editing process, that feeds back into my creative ideas going forward. This worked, this comment didn't work, the way that we did that with that camera, that didn't work, let's do this next time, let's have this kind of operations. Even something as simple as like, oh, someone didn't understand how to use the controller. Okay, so the next time we need to like, maybe we put in a bit at the top that says like, you know, welcome to the VR experience. This is like, if you hold your controller in your right hand, like this is how you use it, blah, 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 blah. So it all feeds into that process, which all gathers that knowledge, which then propels you and makes it so much easier and more efficient when you do start to work on your passion projects again. And obviously you can be doing them side by side. But yeah, so when it comes back to the actual question of like, how do you balance them? I've started to see them as intertwined. I've started to see them as, I mean, I try now to, I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but I try now to only really work with 2 or 3 clients maximum for the whole year. Like I want long-term clients that have big budgets, work on big projects, who I trust, who I like to work with. I like to work on those projects so that I know that I've definitely got cash flow. But then also now I'm kind of like now seeing them as quite intertwined in like those projects. I'm only really doing them now if I am a little bit passionate about them, if they are in the niche that I've decided to carve out for myself, because now all of a sudden I'm not necessarily seeing them as, well, this is the paying work and this is the passion work that I don't get paid for. It's like, it's not that black and white anymore. It's more seamless. And for so long, I never thought that that was an option. And now I'm realizing that that absolutely is an option, and it's an option for you. It's an option for you no matter what level you are. Of course, you have to build your experience, but even deciding that very early on, like, oh, I really want to work in like action travel film, like VR films. All of a sudden that kind of changes your strategy about what portfolio pieces you go after, what clients you're kind of going after, what circles you want to run in. And when you're passionate about the subject that you are doing in a commercial sense as well, it just makes life so much more worth living. I think so many artists, they go into the commercial game again. They think, in fact, I know so many people that have done this, that have opened up a video production company, and they're like, I'm going to make a feature film. I just need a few clients to pay the bills. But then I'm going to write that feature film script. I'm going to make that feature film. And then we're going to turn into a feature film company. And it's like, I know exactly 0 companies that have managed to do that successfully. And I operated in those circles for a while. So it's not just like, it's like 1 or 2 people. I know like a lot of people that was their ambition, and it never happened, because if you get on the treadmill of corporate work or commercial work and you get into a sector, or you get into doing the kind of projects that you don't actually like, you're just doing for the money, there will never be the opportunity to kind of like to make them both work intertwined to benefit you. They will always remain separate, and you'll always be disappointed. And actually, to some extent, sometimes you will end up, this is actually another interesting point. Sometimes you do have to make the call about when it's time to say no to commercial work. There has been several times in my VR career where I've gotten to the point where I'm stretched too thin. I'm really burned out. I know that I should be focusing on an original project, but there's a part of me that's like, oh my God, I'm like a kid in the candy shop. I've been offered this much money to work on this kind of project for this brand, and it's really hard to say no to that. But I know ultimately it doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with like the direction that I want to go in. And this all ties back to the first ever episode that I did of the 31 Day Challenge, all about dreamlining. And it's not necessarily looking at how much money you need to make, although that is a big part of it. It's about first looking at the big picture. What do you want your life to be like? What kind of projects, what do you want your day to look like? How many hours do you want to work a day? How many days do you want to work a month? How many months do you want to work a year? How many adventures do you want to have? Do you want to travel? Do you want to like buy a big house? Then once you understand that, then it's like, okay, well, how much money do I need for that? And then, okay, well, this is the amount that I need every month. So how can I do as minimal amount of work as possible? And the work that I do, how can I make that work pay the bills, but also be stuff that I actually enjoy with people that I enjoy working with? That is the gold. That's the winner. And then obviously, then you can start to kind of like look at, okay, well, in my free time, I'm not burned out and stressed and tired because I'm actually doing work. I'm doing a normal amount of work because I've like said no to the things that don't align with that dreamlining goal, that dreamlining idea of what I want my life to be like. I've said no to the work that doesn't align with that. And now I can use that free time to write that script, or to find that partner that might go and raise funds for that next project or whatever it might be. And of course, right now is particularly difficult for us creators because there aren't many ways that you can make 100% of your income. In fact, it's pretty much almost impossible to make 100% of your income from VR entertainment, unless you're in the game space. And even then, you'd have to be pretty conservative, I think. But that isn't to say that we won't get there. But I don't want all of you to burn out and quit the industry because it's so hard to make original work. And the reason you got into this was because you wanted to make original work. And the only way to make original work was to take on corporate and paying work. But it wasn't the right type of stuff. So you're burned out and you don't like the projects you're working on, you don't like the clients you're working with. And so you end up leaving the industry because, do you know what? I could go out with a few mates and make a feature film on my iPhone. So why on earth would I break my back to go that extra mile and have to do all the extra legwork to work on VR? You know? That's where I'm coming from. Wow, this was a really ranty episode, wasn't it? Woo! I got on several high horses. I'm coming back down to earth now. But it's true. And do you know what? Part of it has to be that you have to ask yourself why you are doing it. If you want to do there obviously is a path to do purely original work, and it is the route more like the starving artist route, where you basically don't take... I've got a friend that only does his own work, and he lives very, very humbly, and he lives off artist grants. He lives, on Arts Council grants, and actually no, that's not entirely true, because he does do work producing for other people's art project as well, but he works within the original workspace in the art world, but he's constantly having to fight tooth and nail for every grant, every fund bid that he goes after, and God love him, he's a hero in my eyes, and he's a phenomenal person with very strong opinions about things, as most artists are. But for me, that's not necessarily the life that I want. And you have to ask yourself if that's the life that you want. If you're so diehard passionate about being an artist, then maybe this isn't the podcast for you. Maybe this isn't the industry for you right now. But if you're interested in working in VR because you believe in the technology, because you have seen a VR piece that made you go, holy shit, this is the future. This is exciting. This is amazing. I need to be a part of this, especially because we all know that in 20 years' time, it will be the thing. And to be part of that original kind of like squad that was part of shaping the industry, that's pretty goddamn cool. These are all the things you need to ask yourself. So coming back to the question, how do you balance original work with paying work? My answer is find a way that you can make your paying work more akin to the stuff that you're passionate about. And then you can do your original work around it. Maybe there's even a way of kind of, I don't know, creating pots of money from the budget, from the paying work that go towards your passion project. I mean, I've talked about on several episodes of this that I funded. Do you hear my stomach rumble then? It is. I am recording this quite early and I haven't had breakfast yet, just FYI. Commitment, guys. I'm so committed to you. But yeah, I funded my first original piece on a credit card. The second piece was part funded by Arts Council, part funded by in-kind services and just grind and hustle. The next piece is obviously is part funded by the BFI, but we'll also be looking to kind of go and raise funds, and it's going to be hard. And if it comes to a point of we can't get as much money for Bad News as I want to be able to deliver the script I want, then I'll have to go back to the drawing board, and I'll have to rope it in. And maybe that's an interesting point to end on, is again coming back to the idea of going forward what the podcast is going to look like. Part of my journey with Bad News, like and with an original VR piece, you will see like what I'm going through, what decisions I'm having to make, because I'm not Spielberg. It's not like I go, and even Spielberg, he doesn't just get to go in and say, like, this is my vision, I want an unlimited budget. I've used the example before, I think, about Martin Scorsese's film, I think it's The Irishman on Netflix. Took something like 10 years, I think, to get made because the budget was just astronomical for a piece of work that wasn't necessarily going to appeal to a mainstream audience. You know, that is not what's going to happen with Bad News. I have a very small budget to make a very big project on, and I will along the way have to make incredibly hard decisions about what to keep in, what to take out, what will I have to sacrifice if we do go after a bigger budget, what kind of audience do we want to go after. Do we go between going after a more kind of exclusive festival type run audience, or do we stick to my mission, which we absolutely will be doing, which is getting VR to new audiences, making it more accessible. There's all sorts of interesting stuff that's going to go into the mix, but that could be another reason why that'd be interesting to show the process of that, because I will show you that even though I feel like I am very fortunate to be in a very 1% position in this industry and have these kind of opportunities, which I'm very fortunate to have, and it's as much luck as it is hard work and talent. But that does not mean that I will still not have to juggle paying work and passion work and how they integrate, and how I kind of like make it through and stay sane and kind of make it work for me is all going to be part of the process. And that's the thing. This is not a science. Again, this is so like nuanced to where you are in life, what you're currently going through, what you're struggling with, what your ambitions are, where you are in your career, what kind of passion projects you want to make, the state of the industry in like the next kind of year, the state of the tech. Something could come out next year that just blows everyone's mind, and it's like a complete game changer, and it totally changes the way that we look at original works in VR. But anyway, so that's it for this episode. 25-minute, boom, love it. Join me tomorrow for the last episode of the 31-day challenge before we transition into more of a ad hoc's not the right word, because it will still hopefully continue to be daily, but more of like a mishmash, not a structured answering question type format version of the podcast. If that's what you want, give me feedback on that. Let me know if that is something that you're interested in. I hope this helped. I hope that this at least sparked some interesting questions for you to consider about the work that you're doing and why you're in this industry, and what would be the dream going forward about like not just what you're doing in VR, but your life in general. If you've not listened to episode 1, definitely recommend go back and listening to that, because it sets the stage for all of this kind of like more nitty-gritty work to do on yourself. With that said, you can send me a message or ask me a question at AlexMakesVR on Instagram and Twitter. You can send me an email, alexmakesvr@gmail.com, and you can sign up to the newsletter where I'm sharing the insider scoops on the VR industry and the business of VR at alexmakesvr.com. I would really appreciate it, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple or Overcast or Google Podcasts, whatever you're listening on. If you can follow and subscribe, that would mean the world to me. It really helps with the algorithm, I've been told. But also, yeah, just mean the world to me, so that you get notified when the episodes go live. If you want to leave a review, if you've gotten value from this, if you feel like you enjoy listening to this and you appreciate the time I'm putting into them, it would mean the world for me if you could leave a rating and a review, if that's possible on your podcast platform. I appreciate they don't make it easy, so no worries at all if you don't have the time or it's just annoying to even think about it, to even try and do that. And yeah, I will catch you tomorrow.